activities and positions of influence in all corridors of power who are in the legislature, so that they are able to be at the center of youth development in the province. And we call on the Premier, noting the fact that in the announcement of the executive, there was no an MEC designated for youth development. The same way he has done in ensuring that crime becomes a priority, youth development must be placed in his office, in the Premier's office. The ANC Youth League family believes that the inclusion of youth voices in the cabinet is essential for addressing the unique challenges faced by young people and for ensuring that their perspectives are integrated into the decision-making process. The exclusion undermines and the efforts to promote youth empowerment and involvement in governance, which are critical for building a dynamic and responsive administration. We urge the ANC to reconsider and address this oversight, reaffirming their commitment to fostering an inclusive government that truly represents all demographics within our province. The African National Congress Youth League, in leading the youth development agenda in Gauteng province, is crucial in fostering socio-economic advancement of young people as a proactive and influential organization. The Youth League has the ability to address and advocate for the pressing issues facing youth, such as unemployment, education, and access to opportunities. Holding an executive position in this particular was significant for young people to then be allowed to place youth development and policy making on top of the agenda. In ensuring that we place youth development on top of the agenda, the ANC Youth League will then present a program of action moving forward to support the efforts of the government of provincial unity. Our foremost objective is to guide all outstanding regions to convene their respective congresses, culminating into a robust provincial congress. However, in drafting a program of action towards this particular process, the Youth League calls for an inclusive dialogue on youth development, including civil society organizations and progressive organizations, to ensure that we give the government of provincial unity that has been formulated by Premier Panyaza Lesufi a youth agenda and a youth program of action that must then be endorsed, so that we are able to change the approach that we have always had. We believe that this dialogue must be held by this end of July. All civil society organizations will then be called, youth activists, to then determine an agenda for youth development in Gauteng, so that we are able to also have bills that legislate young people to then become active participants in the mainstream economy of activities in Gauteng. We also call upon the ANC and the new executive to give 50% of senior management positions to young people. We want 50% of HODs. We also want 50% of business in this particular province to be given to young people. This will give efforts to ensuring that we prepare for the future, and we reiterate our firm stance against the exclusion of young people in any participation of the mainstream economy. We call on young people of Gauteng to stand up and become part of the conversation of ensuring that the government of provincial unity has got stability in Gauteng, but also prospers and delivers opportunities meaningfully for our young people. We thank you. Young people in Gauteng must soldier on, they will overcome, and they must continue to raise their issues sharply without fear or favor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to the provincial convener, Comrade Nzako, for delivering the statement of the Youth League in the province. I'm going to open up for questions. I'll start from the right to the left. If I can just note hands from the east right to the left. You'll be number 1, 2. I'll take these 3 for now and then. Okay. Yes, in that sequence, please, we can start.
Good afternoon. Raymond Kwame, I just want to know, the previous said that the doors are open for the DA in Gauteng. Do you think the doors should be open, or do you think that's the door? Yeah, that's all for me for now.
Number two.
My name is Calvin Luda. I'm from the SAPC. I heard you mentioning that you are safeguarding against corruption. I just wanted to ask, because in 2009, MEC when she was with the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, and she took a state car and borrowed to her husband, and the car was stolen, and the car costed almost R1 million. That is why she was removed from the portfolio at that time back to legislature. So Nomvula Mokonyane was the premier at that time. She said even if she didn't resign, she would have been fired. So if you are saying to us that car was bought without following proper procedures, the 1 million Mercedes-Benz, that car was stolen, not being driven by an official of the government, by a husband. The same person is here employed to be an MEC. So if you are saying you are safeguarding against corruption, what do you mean? Number two, what are your proposals? Because I have heard that there are proposals to reform the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. I just wanted to get from the ANCYL, what are they saying on that? Thank you.
Number three.
It's Heidi Jacques from ANCYL. The question was asked about Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi yesterday saying that they want to persuade the DA to continue or reopen negotiations. How does that make you feel? And how do you feel about the possibility of MK and EFF joining in on this? Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
You can come in. The questions are now.
Thank you very much, members of the media, for the questions. I will start with the question that was asked by you, linked with the question in relation to the possibilities of working with the Democratic Alliance. I think you might have noted that the Government of National Unity, of course, together with the Government of Provincial Unity, the ANC has emphasized that the doors are open for each and every party that will subscribe to the values as well as the shared vision to ensure that we deliver services to the people of Gauteng. If you look at the composition currently of the Government of Provincial Unity in Gauteng, is that the parties that have signed the agreement or that agreed to form government does not constitute more than 50%. So it might be difficult for the African National Congress to pass budget because we've got 28 seats. We have Rising Mzansi with 1 seat. We have the IFP with 1 seat. We've got the Patriotic Alliance with also 2 seats, and that is about 32 seats. And the number that we are looking for, of course, to ensure that we run government that is stable, is not riddled with issues such as motion of no confidence. We need to have parties that have sufficient numbers that will take us to more than that 50%. It is true that in Gauteng, you cannot form government without the involvement of 3 parties: the Democratic Alliance, the Economic Freedom Fighters, as well as the MK Party. That's why we are coming out as the African National Congress, as pronounced by the Premier, that the doors are open. If you agree with the shared values of ensuring that we deliver services to the people of Gauteng, the doors is open. For the Democratic Alliance, for the EFF, as well as other parties that are keen to work for the people of Gauteng. So we are going to accept if the DA guard against the issues of their arrogance, as well as negotiating in bad faith, as well as bullying the African National Congress. We cannot allow that as the youth league, that the Democratic Alliance comes to Gauteng province and bully the ANC. But if they want to negotiate in good faith, we will support the Premier of Gauteng to allow them so that we can have stability. Because the manner in which the government is constituted now, it might even affect the functioning of local government. So if the EFF want to come to the party, the door is open. if the DA wants to come to the party, the door is also open. On the issue of the reform in relation to the student financial aid scheme, you might have noted that there was issues in relation to payment of student fees in institutions of higher learning, delayed payment to beneficiaries that were approved by NSFAS, but however, the NSFAS could not pay their fees on time, and some of the students were chased away from their residences. And in Gauteng in particular, that has actually contributed to our decline significantly in institutions of higher learning. You might have seen that we have lost significantly votes in institutions like that university, the University of Pretoria, as well as the University of Johannesburg. And NSFAS was the major issue. So part of the reforms that the Youth League want to propose is that let us ensure that we've got companies that are going to distribute these funds to students in a manner in which does not compromise the rights of learning. And we must do away with a situation where we give these learners money directly to their bank account, because that system has proven not to work. Some of the students do not use that money for their learning materials, do not use that money for accommodation, but they rather settle for a back room in Soweto, in other places, and use that money for other things. So that system of having a fund management company to manage the funds, and the funds are paid directly to the institution, and the funds are paid directly to service providers, and there is a card in a form of bank card that the funds are deposited there and the students are able to swipe. They must not have liquid cash, because when they have liquid cash, it is very difficult for them to do things. And one other question that was asked in relation to I think the chair would take the other question about the fundraiser.
No. Thanks. I think in trying to cover some of the things is that NFSAS on its own, we're very happy that Minister Nzimande was moved from higher education. In fact, our feeling was that he must even resign from the executive, because he should have taken firm decisions to ensure that students are able to then study freely without any problems of having issues around their money deposited into ensuring that they study, they have all study materials, and of course they have accommodation. And I think that we'll still pursue and call the Youth League nationally to call for Nzimande to resign even from the executive, because anyone who's got an attitude to youth development, especially in education, we don't think will then be our favorite. And these are some of the things that we must then be able to look at. Corruption in the 7th administration, this Youth League will look at that closely. And of course, we believe that there have been processes in what you are referring to. We don't want to enter in that entanglement. But currently, we'll watch every MEC closely, very closely as the Youth League, and we would be the first to call out on anyone who's accused of wrongdoing, especially coming from the ANC. And of course, we're calling out whistleblowers to not shy away from coming to the Youth League and say, we have seen your members of the ANC in the executive, they are doing this and that. We'll call them out publicly without any fear or favor. And of course, we'll ensure that anybody who's accused of corruption, or there's any smell of corruption in this current 7th administration, this Youth League currently serving now will not agree to that particular process. And I think these are some of the issues that we'll look into. DA inclusion, the provincial secretary has spoken on it, yes. The door is still open, but the ANC must not agree to a silent coup and a backdoor of running of government. Provincial unity should be that of serving our people, not wanting to do a silent coup. We don't agree to that. And our people have given the ANC less than 50%, but still had confidence to ensure that the ANC becomes a majority or the leading party in terms of percentages that we've got. So we agree to that. We are willing to govern with everybody, to talk with anyone, but we don't want underground operations to then destabilize an agenda of serving our people. So MK and EFF, they themselves declared that they don't want to work with us. If now, of course, they've changed attitude towards negotiations, if they want to come in, they must follow suit as any other party that has then discussed with the ANC through the National Framework of Government of National Unity. Thanks. I think if there are other questions.
I just want to check from Media House, is there any other that would like to ask questions? Okay, I'm going to give just the last round and then we'll towards closure. Okay, let me just take, Mama, please just say your name and from which media house you come from. Thank you.
Colonel from SABC Radio. Well, you spoke about losing significant ground, in universities, but overall, young people felt that the ones that are not in universities are the ordinary citizens that rather stay away because there's no better alternative. As in terms of rebranding or trying to attract the young vote again to the youth, what are you going to do differently so that you can gain those numbers again in this election?
Okay.
Again, Calvin from the same SABC. I have an issue with the cabinet. I saw it and I just checked the age of these people that were announced. Nomandu Komorale, famous Jacob Mamabulu. I don't know their exact age, but those people are almost like 55 to 60. Some of them are being recycled. Whilst the ANC UK consulted, I know it's a GPU, it's not solely about the African National Congress, but where you guys consulted, especially for these members, because they are coming from your own party. They are old, you are young, you are saying we need young people to come, but these people are old, they've been there forever. So what are you saying about such people? 55 is a very old age for someone who can be reappointed as an MEC for the whole province, the economic hub of the country. Thank you.
I think there was a 10%?
Yes, good morning. What?
Afternoon.
Yes. My name is Lung, I'm from the Men and Guardian. Look, you are talking about a silent coup of the DA here in Gauteng that you don't want to allow that to happen. And if one looks at the policies of the ANC and the DA, they're totally different. As the Youth League, how do you plan to, or do you see the current ANC that is leading in the provincial, maybe pushing the issue of NDR? How do you think the policies of these parties are aligned to the NDR? And secondly, if you look at it, Gauteng seems not to have an issue with working with EFF and MK. Would you prefer them to be in cabinet, or do you prefer them to just support you when it comes to voting?
Okay, good afternoon, members of the media. Maybe to try and answer the issue of youth, there's general issue of youth apathy across, and it is through programs that do not materialize that makes them not to form part of voting and many other things. For example, government would come and put some stalls, promise this and that, nothing comes out. With our attitude for this Senate administration is that every program that is driven by our government must be able to address their needs. If you promise township economy, young people must benefit out of that. They must be able to make an example on Usisu benefiting Simboni. Those should be things, because if nothing happens, they then generally say we don't benefit out of government. And it's not that government not doing anything, but it is not putting much effort in addressing those things. That is the first part on my answering. The second one, of course, we had discussions with the ANC,
That is why we're in this briefing to express our dissatisfaction that out of 7 people, no young person is appointed, and we feel that the ANC has failed to give us a representation in a province that is governed or that is majority young people. It is saddening to us, and we are calling for the ANC to rethink their strategy. As DA and others come to party as we move forward, they must rethink their strategy to say young people must be included, young people must be seen being active, because if they don't see one of their own, it also creates the same thing of voter apart. Why do you participate in politics if young people are not seen in executive? So those are things that we are engaging the ANC continuously on, as they are engaging on other partners. On the issue of the National Democratic Revolution and the EFF and the MK, of course, we're an organization that is driven by a politics that are informed on. Some are calling us the middle left, some are calling us the center. But the EFF and the MK, they remain strategic organizations as and when you advance certain causes, because we have a same constituency, we have the same interest. The DA becomes a partner as and when we want to form government. And it is because of our own people who have put us in this situation. We are engaging everybody. Capital must also be accommodated in building Gauteng, but also it must not be compromising the working class and the poor. That is where the EFF and MK come into part. So our responsibility broadly is to protect, as the ANC is a broad church, to protect everyone's interest. But in majority, we want to protect the working class and the poor. That's our interest. That's where the EFF and MK comes into part. So I don't think the NDR is off the trail. We are still on course, but we need different tactics to arrive at the adjusted goal. So for now, voters put us in this situation that we must speak to everyone. We are speaking to everyone, but we could never compromise on policies that speak to the poor and the working class, more especially the rural poor, those that are affected by the electricity bill, and many other things. So the Youth League stands with the working class, stands with the poor. In its objective, it remains the organization for the vulnerable. So the DA is a tactical partner to constitute government, to stabilize the country as people want us to stabilize, but we can never compromise on things that are affecting our people. Thank you very much.
In relation to the consultation to the formation of government and provincial unity, as well as the appointment of the cabinet in this 7th administration, we did have several meetings with the African National Congress, the provincial chair as well as the provincial secretary. We had a meeting as well with the Premier of Gauteng, ANCYL Gauteng. We also had several meetings with the provincial office bearers of Gauteng. And in those meetings, the framework was provided in appointing the cabinet as well as the composition of that particular cabinet. And the framework was that the ANC will consider, of course, the alliance, will consider the youth, will consider women, will consider experience, and will also consider retention in those meetings. We then presented our view as the Youth League that would, of course, want to form part of the cabinet given the demographics of Gauteng, as well as that young people constitute more than 60% of the population of Gauteng province. It would be injustice to the youth of Gauteng if the Premier exclude young people to form part of this 7th administration. It's necessarily a vote of no confidence to young people of Gauteng. That's why we are calling the ANC to reconsider. Because if you look at the framework, the alliance is covered, women are covered, retention is covered. And we believe that the ANC pushed this retention to be about 60%. And now retention is about 100%. And we felt that the Premier should have considered a young person to form part of that cabinet. Of course, we are happy with some of the appointment, former leaders of the ANC Youth League, that are our generation in that cabinet. who are going to ensure that they push the agenda of the Youth League. But that is not enough, because we want a young person that is less than the age of 35. In terms of the formation of government of provincial unity, we adopted the framework from national, that we must consider parties that believe in the rule of law and would uphold the constitution. We must also consider, because in terms of the ideology, parties like the DA, who are different in terms of their ideology, our policy position, as well as our manifestos are different. They don't believe in issues such as the national health insurance. They don't believe in affirmative action. They are not pro-poor. But however, because the voters have put us where we are, we need to find a compromise and in equilibrium where we put the people of Gauteng as well as the people of South Africa first. That's why we are saying that the doors are not closed with the Democratic Alliance. They must just come and negotiate in good faith. In relation to the assertion that we've got a good relationship with the EFF in Gauteng, that is not really true. We have a good relationship with each and every party that is part of the provincial government, that is part of the provincial legislature. If the EFF actually, they said that we must write a letter to them to explain how we're going to form part of this government of provincial unity. They do not want to meet the ANC. MK party said they can't meet the ANC. Currently, they're still dealing with their internal politics. By the time they resolve their internal issues and the EFF accept our invitation to form part of government of provincial unity, they are going to be entertained. Like we said before, the current setup is not sufficient enough to pass budget. The current setup is not sufficient enough to pass legislative function that requires majority of members of the provincial legislature, which is more than 50% in order to pass those particular functions. So we have no choice as the African National Congress but to invite these parties to come and agree on a minimum agreement. Because the manner in which our government is constituted, we might be vulnerable to agree on certain things. You might imagine when we want to pass budget and we need numbers, we go and engage a particular party. They might raise issues that will compromise the values. And we have said that in this 7th administration, like the chair said, we want accountability, we want transparency. That's why every agreement that the ANC must enter into, it must be an agreement that is public, it must be an agreement that is explained to the people of Gauteng. We do not want issues of side agreement where we say, no, let's pass a budget, please help us here and there. We don't want that. That's why we are saying Gauteng province, in this government of provincial unity, the ANC must continue. Actually, the ANC, because it's the leader of this government of provincial unity, must continue to persuade the Democratic Alliance. We must continue to persuade the economic freedom fighters, together with MK Party and all other parties that are there in the legislature, to come into this government of provincial unity so that the interests of the people of Gauteng are catered for. Thank you.
I'm just going to take one last round, and after this we will definitely close, and then we will allow for interviews if media houses are interested with our officials. Of course, they're here for that. Just one last, is there any other on my right? Okay, thank you. You'll be the last one.
Okay. My name is Amanda Cause. I work for News 24. While you're unhappy with the setup in the province in terms of youth representation, are you happy to see young people represented in the GNU, or are you not happy with that as well?
In relation to the government of national unity, we are happy with the appointment that President Ramaphosa made. We've got young people that are below the ages of 35 that are deputy, the acting spokesperson who is serving as Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry. We've got our former convener, Comrade Nonweba, who is serving in the presidency. We also have our Deputy President, Comrade Pumzile, who's currently serving as a Deputy Minister of Labour and Employment. And those are young people that are tried and tested. Those are young people that have grown through the ranks of our movement. They were polished by the African National Congress. We've seen them. Comrade Zuko was working in DTI at some point as a speechwriter. Comrade Manga was working in the presidency at some point. They have experience in those particular spaces, and they are going to ensure that they cater for the interest of young people across board. So we are very happy with that appointment. Who are disappointed in Gauteng that out of the 7 MECs that the Premier has announced, there is exclusion of a young person. We are not happy with that. That's why we are calling for the Premier of Gauteng to reconsider. We are saying in all provinces where the Premier is the African National Congress, there's a representation of a young person in the executive. Actually, in the Eastern Cape, the Premier has done so well, where they've given the Youth League a deputy speaker as well as an MEC in Limpopo and all other provinces. We are saying, in addition to the former Youth League leaders that we have currently in the executive, the likes of Comrade Matume as well as Comrade Kidiboni, we want a representation of a younger person who's less than 35, as per the framework that was provided in the PEC meeting by the negotiating team of the ANC as well as the chairperson of the ANC. So that is our stance.
Yeah, I'm sorry, just now.
Man, okay.
I just wanted to ask, because you are saying the Premier, you are calling him to reconsider. Do you have a time frame or timeline? Are you going to meet him soon to talk to him about this?
Yeah. I think we will meet the leadership of the ANC. There are many more issues that we want them to cover. Not only a young person in the executive. We said we want 50% of HODs in this new administration to be young people under the age of 35. And we have them, they've studied, they're ready to serve the 7th administration. Government can't be an old age home for old people to get their pensions. Legislature can't be an old age home. The hour of the youth has struck, and we must bring in a number of young people in the administration and of course in the executive, and also in senior management positions. The reason why service delivery is at halt at sometimes is that we've got old people holding positions to implement some of the service delivery programs, and they're sitting there, they're tired, there's no energy, they can't do anything. And all of these people, they must go. We don't care whether they are relatives of whomever who's in power. It's now time old people must then shift for new ideas, new energy that will then be able to ensure that we deliver for our people. In terms of bringing young people together and make sure that they participate in all activities of government, we're going to change the attitude. That's why we're calling on a provincial dialogue of young people, inclusive of the progressives and civil society organizations, where we're going to determine an agenda of young people of Gauteng. Of course, it will be led by the Youth League, but we're calling every young person to be part of that particular process, so that when we speak about the youth agenda, we don't speak about only a political youth agenda. We speak about an inclusive youth agenda, so that when we hold the 7th administration accountable, we'll then say to them, the youth met of Gauteng, this is what they wanted, and you did not deliver. Nasi Spani, majority of people who will then be employed and initiatives that will come through must be young people. HODs that released statements that these programs must stop, the Premier must then fire them immediately. That HOD that released a statement that Nasi Spani, the Green Army Brigades, they must go, must fire them immediately. They must go. And a young person must replace that particular HOD, because we can't take kindly when the political leadership takes initiatives to at least relieve the poor and people in the administration, because they think they know English too much. They want to write things that are not there. We're not speaking about English now in this 7th administration. Young people are impatient. Unemployment is a ticking time bomb. We want the administration to respond quickly on issues affecting young people. And these are things that we're going to be watching closely. And then we won't take kind to any official They will find us in their doorstep. Before the Premier arrives, they will find us in their doorstep protesting in their offices. We'll close them and ensure that they leave. And then they will find the letter after, that they are no longer safe. And the Premier must do a lifestyle audit of all officials of government that are here. These officials of government, I see you are looking at politicians, we're coming to them, those ones, because they've got a responsibility. But officials of government, they're living a lavish lifestyle. And of course, we must then check them one by one. They're the ones stalling service delivery. They're the ones not implementing decisions that are taken politically in the executive. And we must come for everybody who's stalling progress. Not only the politicians, everybody in the administration entrusted with the responsibility to serve our people, they must serve them with diligence and ensure that the Batho Pele principle always takes precedence in serving our people. So we are here, we are going to be the watchdog, we are going to speak against anybody who lives a lavish lifestyle and of course spitting on the face of the poor. We will not take kind to those things because as this youth league, we don't want to inherit the ANC that will then out of power. So we're preparing for 2026. That's why we're involving everybody. That's why we want speedily implementation and everybody must be fired. MECs that don't perform, they must be fired as well, immediately. And every MEC that is fired, they must be replaced with a young person. We don't care, it's 5 MECs that are fired. When you fire, replace with an under 35 because we're tired of an old show. Thanks.
Once again, I would like to thank members of the media house and thank